Okay, so I would like to warmly welcome you to our third webinar of the webinar series, Bridging GI and Space Initiatives Fostering Gender Equality. And as already announced the last time, we today broaden a bit our scope in two ways. On the one hand side, that we continue with the presentation from last time, Space Girls, Space Women, and now are entering really more the space sector and space world. And on the other hand, also because we have today an international organization with us, namely a Space4Women. And we are very happy to welcome two of our speakers, Marcus Beltran and Elisa. So Marcus is based in Vienna at the UN, namely the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, the UNOOSA. So having a background in political science, not technical background in space industry, he was very involved also in UN SPIDER, like space-based information for disaster management and emergency response, and also the United Nations Information Service. And today is as a program officer very much responsible not only for the initiative Space4Women, but for the organization of various international conferences, workshops, meetings, and symposium. Some of you might have already met him in one or the other. And with that, I would like to hand over to my colleague Aida, who will introduce our second speaker.
Our second speaker is Dr. Elisa. She's a researcher and lecturer in space law, policy and ethics at Harvard University. She's the founder and leader of the Space Consortium in Harvard and MIT. Her expertise is in planetary protection and planetary defense, and she will speak us about the UNOOSA mentor program, where she's a mentor.
So with that, I think we can directly start, and I will give the floor to Marcus. Whenever you have questions, of course, you can write them in the chat. You can also ask them directly after the talks, or of course, we have, as always, reserved a 20-minute slot afterwards for the Q&A session. So Marcus, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Barbara. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I hope you can hear me. I hope you can see my screen. First of all, thank you very much, as I said, for the kind invitation. It's always a pleasure to talk to other groups who are in a similar area active and who are interested in a similar topic than we are from Space4Women, which is UNOOSA initiative. Today, it's my pleasure to talk a bit about advancing gender equality in jobs and education in the space sector as a very broad topic. I would like to touch a bit upon what we are doing under Space4Women, why we are doing what we are doing under Space4Women. And then it's my great pleasure that Elisa is with us, since she has a 1-year experience already working with us. She has basically over a year experience of really mentoring other persons. So I'm really happy that she can give us some insights of her expertise and experience. And that's something which is, I would regard as very unique, that we are having dedicated women from the entire space sector offering voluntary their time under the Space4Women initiative to mentor other experts from the field. Having said that, I am working in the office of the director at UNOOSA. I'm not only in charge, unfortunately, for Space4Women. It would require a minimum a full-time staff position within our office. Not only require, I think it would deserve also. We see that there's a lot of feedback, a lot of positive notion to it. We hear the entire topic on gender empowerment is a priority within the UN. It is a priority for member states, and I think it would just deserve more attention. And with that, I would like to give you a bit more overview of what we are doing. and why we're doing what we're doing. So for those of you who don't know UNOOSA, UNOOSA is the office which undertakes initiatives that promote international cooperation in the peaceful uses of outer space, with obviously right now with a specific target to achieve sustainable development goals. As such, we are on the one hand side a typical UN organization, meaning that we are the secretariat of the so-called Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, where member states are coming together 3 times a year to discuss the different elements on space, space at large, on the peaceful uses of space. So on the one hand side, science, technology, and and on the other hand, space law and policy. And then we have the big committee meeting every summer. At this stage, while we are talking, the scientific and technical subcommittee is actually meeting at this moment, touching on different topics from space for climate action to space for SDGs and so on. And then on the other hand, the office is a capacity builder, doing outreach and awareness raising. We have dedicated programs on how space can be used for disaster management and emergency response. We are bringing together global navigation satellite system providers to exchange under the roof of the United Nations on interoperability of the systems and so on. And I would like to really present one specific initiative, which is the Space4Women initiative, which facilitates access to the benefits of space exploration, science and technology education, and STEM careers for women and girls around the world. We are in the time since 2015 on talking about the Sustainable Development Goals within the UN, as you all know. And if you look at that, and I always say it, gender equality is not an SDG in itself. It is a cross-cutting SDG reaching all over the other SDGs. So if you want to achieve other SDGs, gender equality is a must. On the one hand side, I always say it as well, I don't regard this as a purely gender empowerment topic. I think it's a societal need. We have heard a lot of researches cited in the past years. The topic itself has become way more prominent, and we are really happy about that. But I think one of the main results of the entire discussion is that if we want to achieve the SDGs, gender equality is enough. And here we really dive in, and here we address this goal. We address an objective. We address with the UNOOSA Space4Women initiative, which obviously looking at first is addressing gender equality and quality education. But why are we doing what we are doing? What's the background to it? You're all from the space sector. You all know this from, I guess, from a daily experience, and you all know this from your professional experience. But obviously, this can be also put into numbers, and this can also be put into research. So on the one hand side, the gender disparity widens at the secondary and the tertiary school levels in many countries. Girls, while they score as well as, or even better than their male peers on science and math-related tests, they are less likely to pursue a career in those fields or even an education in these fields. Women all over the world represent only 35% of all students enrolled in STEM fields. And when you look at the typical academic career, the representation of women declines over the advancements of the careers to only 24% under the full professor role. Looking specifically at the space sector, and that's something I guess you all know and have heard quite often. So as a bit of a recap, only around 11% of all people who have traveled to space have been women. 15 female astronauts have conducted spacewalk compared to 210 men. And it took 20 years of progress at the ISS to have an all-female crew finally take part in a single extravehicular activity. So all of these are just really some historic events and some statistics, which underlines the need that we from UNOOSA do something on the space. When you look at the private sector and the CEO, we only have around 19% of leaders in aerospace and defense. And when you look at the workforce itself, the numbers is not really did really better. We only have around 20 to 22% of space industry workforce and that's a statistic which has not changed over the past 30 years. And when you look at the recently released World Economic Forum report on gender equality, it will still take us around 100 years until we can potentially, and I think that the word potentially has to be stressed because it's something we look into the future where gender parity is achieved. So I think this is all but just really calls for action for us.
Hier ist einer, Marie.
I see somebody is writing on the screen. I don't know. If you disagree with something, please feel free to tell me. That's perfectly fine. So what are we doing? Why is it important of gender equality in space? So I've started obviously with the SDGs as a one important element in this discussion. But when you look into a bit of a next level of the SDGs on specific SDGs such as no poverty, decent work, SDG 8, or industry, innovation, and infrastructure. So when you look at no poverty, space tends to offer high earning jobs in a fast growing sector. So providing women with more financial freedom and significant contribution to household income. I think the next one is something when you look at the global scale, 90% of future jobs will require STEM related skills in one way or the other. So the entire society must possess skills and education to be competitive in the future employment market. And studies both in the private and the public sector have shown, and that's something which I always underline it, that diversity is an asset, diversity is a need, and the diversity of skill and perspective leads just to greater innovation and success. And this is on the one hand side something which we have seen over the past in successful researches. It's something which we use very importantly in our activities when we do outreach and awareness raising, that to underline the need for a project like this. And I think when you look at these three arguments, it's just another call for action for us at UNOOSA, and also a great sign for the Women in Copernicus initiative. But what causes the gender gap in STEM fields? So why do women and girls not enter or leave the STEM fields? How can we change that? And I think that's really important to understand the Space4Women, specifically the Space4Women initiative, where we start our engagement. So there is a bias in the hiring process, with male candidates selected more often, regardless of qualifications. STEM roles are often very much portrayed as male roles, which undermine confidence, interest, and willingness to pursue a career. Lack of female role models is making it difficult to picture themselves in STEM fields. Lack of encouragement from peers, teachers, parents. It's a societal question as well from those persons around us. And girls have a limited exposure to creativity and contribution that STEM fields make for a better world. So that's kind of the gaps or the causes for the gender gap. And when you look at, going back, when you look at those, how we can address what makes women and girls stay in these fields, it is actually exactly along these lines. It is hands-on activities. It is providing opportunities and being openness about transparent and open about the potential of going into STEM field, as well as, and that's something which is really critical, offer role models, offer an exchange platform for supporting women and girls who want to pursue a career in STEM. So while these are the causes, there's always solutions for these causes. So what is the Space4Women? What has been the background of Space4Women? And then that's something which I'm sometimes really not really. It took quite a while, let's put it this way, until we have been advancing on the Space4Women achievement. So when you look at this at Unispace 3, which was a conference in Vienna hosted by UNOOSA, there's a Vienna Declaration. There's a focus in this declaration on providing equal opportunities for women and girls in the space sector. And in the same paragraph, there is a dedicated a focus on inclusion of the youth in the discussion around the future of space. So what has developed out of that? Out of that, we have seen the development of the so-called Space Generation Advisory Council. I guess a youth group some of you are familiar with. But following 1999, we haven't seen any developments on the importance of gender empowerment in the space sector. So it took us another 17 years, despite the fact that we had obviously the MDGs in between, the SDGs have been approved, but specifically for the space sector, it took another 17 years for the preparation of the so-called Unispace Plus 50, so the celebration of the first space conference. And in there was a member state request that we have a specific thematic priority on capacity building in the 21st century. And in there, developing countries requested the inclusion of a focus of using space technologies as a vehicle, as a motivating factor for getting more women in STEM fields. So that was really the starting point of the Space4Women initiative as we see it today. So, and that's something which I was lucky to be at the right time, at the right spot, that I was able to take this over and take this forward. And since then, we have grown thanks to great support, as you will hear later on from Alyssa, from volunteer work and through expert meetings and through different activities. So how does Space4Women increase access to STEM, space education and jobs? There is, on the one hand side, we're promoting a mentoring platform and the Space4Women network. On the mentoring platform, you will hear later. We provide policy relevant advice, research, data knowledge management, and evidence-based awareness raising. Something which I mentioned before, really highlight the evidence-based awareness raising, a topic which I think cannot be stressed enough, something which we all refer to in terms of when you get this question, so why is it important? I think for us being on this call, it's an obvious need, but we still need to do a bit more outreach and awareness raising, and we will get there through evidence, clear evidence raising. Facilitate capacity building and training. So we are currently in discussion, for example, with a counterpart in the UN to develop a Space4Women webinar for the use of space technology for specifically water management and for women in least developed countries. So there should be a focus of for access to this training, for this webinar, only for women in least developed countries. Communication, obviously, of the opportunities and empowering young women. The last two, I would say, is a bit of a combination between our work through the mentoring platform, through the network, but as well, obviously, hopefully soon again when we can meet at events and activities. Moving a bit to the network, Alyssa will go into substance on what she has been doing. I just want to give you a bit of the overview of what we have been doing so far. We launched the first cohort of women last year on the 11th of February 2020, as you all know, the International Day of Women and Girls in Science and Technology. The objective is educating for women and girls in STEM fields, getting some industry leader support. I always stress it's not only about the leader. I think it's also about the entire space sector supporting each other to advance careers. I think mentors can be industry leader on the one hand side, but can also be mid-level career experts who have advanced in the career, who can give advice on subject which to choose at university, how to break the glass ceiling to advance in a professional career. All of this, I think, is really important. It's not only, I really have to stress, it's not only about well-known industry leaders. It's also, and first and foremost, because that's the wealth of the workforce at the moment. It's exactly about the mid-level career experts and university researchers as well. It's we have started it last year. We are obviously a bit in the discussion of we are under pressure of the current global situation. So we have agreed with all the mentors to extend them for one more year if they wish to do so. So they are now here for a 2-year appointment. They have to submit annual reports. We are highlighting the activities on our website. We are highlighting the activities through our social media networks. We're trying to promote it at different events. I just wanted to underline it's a really a diverse. It's selected mentors from all over the field. 35 mentors so far, diverse geographic background, really diverse expertise. One thing we are focusing right now, first and foremost, obviously on STEM fields, but we are a bit broader than that. We have communication experts, we have legal experts, we have we really want to depict the diversity of the space sector at large, while obviously having a focus on STEM at first. Just a very broad overview about the mentors. As I said, up until today, 35 mentors. We have recently closed the application for the next cycle. We are currently in the selection process of the next cycle. We have received over 70 new applications. So we have received really amazing backgrounds, amazing CVs, really great support and great initiatives. So that's great support and great background. We are getting a lot of feedback on social media and through our website. You can see here also in the middle, I wanted to point out that it's not exclusively for female applicants, it's also for male. I really wanted to say, as I always say, and I said it, I opened it up and I repeat it, it's not a gender empowerment. And if you want to achieve gender equality, it's a societal topic and we need to have men involved similarly than women, because then we can achieve the change altogether. So the Space4Women itself is a multi-year program. We are supported by different stakeholders. We have started the website thanks to the support of the Permanent Mission of Israel. We did get some funding for an expert meeting from the European Space Agency. We are partly supported by the government of Austria, and also Women in Aerospace Europe has been a contributor to one of our events. And what are the key benefits of partnership, of working with us? We drive forward the campaign for gender equality, demonstrate the effectiveness of collaborative action, measurable results. So it's really something which I really would like to underline. It's something where we can really make a difference. It's something which can be referenced in gender work, and it's high visibility. Before I hand over to Alyssa, I really wanted to underline that on the one hand side, we are doing events, activities. So unfortunately, we had to cancel last year's Brazil meeting. We might move the entire Brazil meeting into the forum, into Expo this year, and in Expo in the UAE. There is a Brazil pavilion. We all know, given the current situation, global situation, health situation, we won't be able to travel to Brazil, but we don't want to have exclusively online and virtual meetings, and to be able to advance, we think that in-person meetings are equally important. So we hope we will be able to do something there. We're expanding, as I said, the mentoring platform. And one of the results and one of the main lessons learned is that there has to be a two-tracked approach. So on the one hand side, we're looking at these mentors, really those who are willing to do one-on-one mentoring, guiding and supporting those mentees who are interested to be mentored. And also we are expanding the connectivity among networks. So if Women in Copernicus is interested to be connected to our to Space4Women in the future, we will be happy to see that we will be opening soon the application opportunity. So it would be great to welcome you and representatives of Women in Copernicus in the network. This will provide you the opportunity to connect to other activities. And then I think that's really something which is important to synchronize activities and jointly advance in the future. And obviously outreach and awareness activities and engagement. With that, I leave it there. I have taken, as usual, a bit more time than I intended to do. I'm excited about the topic. I really like working on this topic. And with that, I don't know whether I should go back to the moderator or directly over to Alyssa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcus. Alyssa, whenever you're ready.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm going to jump in then and start sharing my screen.
Okay, thank you.
Let me know when I think right now it should be full screen, right?
Yes.
Great. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I'm very happy to be with you today. And I thank the organizers and Marcus for giving me this opportunity to tell you a little bit more about my UNOOSA Space4Women mentor journey and testimonial. This is what I'm planning on talking about today. I will give you a quick summary of my journey within the Space4Women network. Then I will tell you about my mentees and the work that I do with them. Then about the Space4Women monthly Mentee webinars. And I'll finish up with some tips and lessons learned if you are interested in becoming a mentor or a mentee. Here we go. So personal journey, for me, it all started in 2017. At the time, I was working at COSPAR, the Committee on Space Research, on their Planetary Protection International Handbook. So I was their Planetary Protection Project Officer. And COSPAR does not have a huge staff and does not have also a lot of women in that small staff. So I ended up representing COSPAR relatively early on in my COSPAR career at this UN meeting. I was kindly invited as part of this first group of women who ended up in New York discussing about their journeys, their challenges in the space world, and the kind of information and activities that we could share with each other to support each other. From that point on, I stayed in touch with a lot of women from this first meeting, and it was quite of an eye-opening experience. I had not considered a lot of the things that I had discovered during this 2017 meeting. I recognized myself in a lot of the things that were discussed, and a lot of things that prior to this meeting felt like me things ended up being things that were related to gender issues at the workplace. And being able to communicate about this and sharing stories, listening to different stories, getting feedback, getting advice was incredibly helpful. So that enabled me afterwards to grow in my career, to see different perspectives, and I can talk about this more in the Q&A section. But really, it opened my eyes to something that I had not really considered before, but that I had in some ways suffered from for my entire career. And so I decided to stay in touch with those fantastic ladies. I created a Facebook group, which is, you know, the smallest thing that you can do pretty much once you're done meeting with people. And we stayed in touch through the Facebook group. We started to do monthly calls, and we just called ourselves the Space4Women group. But behind the curtain, Marcus and his team were working very hard to develop a formal structure and create the UNOOSA Space4Women mentorship program and the network. So in 2020, we were reached out to again and submitted applications to become mentors. We joined the mentorship program, and then we ended up discovering the whole structure along the way for this past year. And it has been really interesting, and I'm actually honestly excited to report about this this year. So what happened to me? Well, I got mentees. The beginning of the program was not completely formal, so there has been a form through the Space4Women UNOOSA website, so the mentees could connect with me via this, but also randomly through LinkedIn, I just ended up with mentees connecting and saying, oh, I heard that you were a mentor, could I be your mentee? And so the selection process ended up with me, and that meant that I overdid it, like most people do when you're not exactly sure what you're supposed to do and you want to do more rather than less. So I ended up selecting 10 mentees, which will change for next year. This will change, but it was a really helpful experience. The mentees that I have, I can tell you a little bit more about them in terms of specifics. The age bracket is between 18 and 35. I am myself 32, I'll admit it. The idea of being a mentor at 32 was a little strange to me, but if you look at the program and all the different mentors of Space4Women, you do have mentors. I think you have a couple who are between 18 and 21. And the point here is because of the definition of mentorship that that is promoted through Space4Women and UNOOSA, that at any age you do have some sort of knowledge that you can share. And I was very honest with my mentees right away. I told them that I could talk about space law and policy. I could tell them about the various backgrounds and the various academic pathways that they could take, because I've taken a few of them myself. I went through 9 different academic programs to be able to do a tour of space academia, and then developed my own network and consortium within the Harvard and MIT Space Consortium network. So I was confident in my ability to talk about different pathways in academia, but I also told them that if they were looking for mentors in the private space sector, if they were looking for mentors with just more experience over a longer career, they could do so, and that is something also available through the Space4Women network. So as I said, I took upon 10 mentees, which was maybe overdoing it a little bit. And thanks to Marcus and his team throughout this year, they collected feedback, they collected just ideas from the mentors and the mentees, and we've kind of agreed that 1 to 2 mentees per year was a good number for a mentor, so that you could do just more one-on-one time with them. So what I did during this past year with my 10 mentees was monthly one-on-one office hours. To be fair, I did not have time to do 10 hours of office hours, so my one-on-ones were usually between 20 and 30 minutes, and not all of my mentees checked with me every month. So it was in the end about maybe 5 to 7 hours of involvement per month. I supported them via emails and via calls whenever they needed to. A lot of the time, especially the first year, mentees aren't sure what they're going to get, and you tell them what you're going to offer to them, but you can have different sort of requirements and different sort of requests. You have mentees who are in my field, in spaceline and policy, and already have sufficient knowledge to ask you questions for their PhD programs, for their dissertation, etc. You have mentees who are in the natural sciences, engineers, space scientists, who want to know a little bit more about your field to connect with their own and to feel their own requirements for their schools, so that in their own work they can add some, in my case, some law and policy. But you do have a lot of mentorship, which is general guidance. Mentees that turn to you to ask you where to look for internships, to tell you about all the time they feel overwhelmed and do not know how to face their work, and you are there kind of like an older sibling, like in some way, sometime like a parent, like a teacher, giving them some sort of life advice and things that worked for you, hoping that it might help them. You also end up providing reference letters when they apply to programs, connect mentees to your own networks. Several of my mentees, for example, some of them were interested in astrobiology. I know about planetary protection, and I do space anthropology. So part of my work is related to astrobiology, but I am not a full-time astrobiologist. But through the Space4Women network, I met some more astrobiologists, and through my previous networks, I had some in my emails, and so I was able to connect them with my own network, and that's a big part of Space4Women, is expand your network and expand your mentees network. Share internship opportunities, share job opportunities, these kind of things. And one of the really interesting thing, which to me was what I needed, especially as a first-time mentor in a formal program, I wanted freedom, and that is what the Space4Women program gave me, because you pretty much turn to Marcus and his team and says, I have an idea, I would like to do this, what do you think? And then through feedback, you rework on your idea and you come up with something, you run with it, and you do whatever you want, which is something that I personally enjoy. So I wanted to create a sense of community for my mentees, but not only my mentees, but all of the mentees from the UNOOSA Space4Women program. The mentors talked with each other, and we still talk with each other. We're connected via monthly or now bi-monthly or every 3 months calls through the Space4Women group, the group from New York. We also have monthly calls. So among mentors, you do talk with each other. But I had no idea what other mentees were doing, and I wanted also for them to connect with each other. So I created a Space4Women monthly mentee webinar, which was greenlighted by UNOOSA, kindly. Thank you, Marcus. And this is what it looked like. So for the past 8 months, it started officially, my mentee webinars started in last July, and starting in September, I invited every month a woman, a good colleague from the space world, the space sector, variation of discipline, background, ages, and asking them to share about their lives. So what, in 1 hour, they have the floor free. They can do a PowerPoint, they can speak just directly to the camera. They are alone with the mentees in a Zoom room with me. No live feed, I record, but just for safekeeping. And the point is to create a safe space where the mentees at the beginning of the call always meet with each other. And that was kind of the point of the first one in July and August, was for the mentees to present themselves, talk with each other, share their problematics and their research to see if they could connect among themselves. And then starting in September, when I started inviting these guests, having them present themselves, question those women directly, and have a safe space to share their journeys. So these women talked about in the hour that they had, the challenges when they had pregnancies and they became mothers, and the hesitation about going back to work, the difficulties sometimes of basic sexism. But honestly, most of the talks are not about being a woman and having challenges. It's more about showcasing different women in our field, because we are a minority, sometimes we just do not come to mind when we think of people to invite. And thanks to the Space4Women program, I was able to reconnect and rethink my way of connecting to my own colleagues. Now I organize the Space Week at Harvard, and I'm happy to say that I think 60% of our program are female speakers, and that just came naturally because of the connection that I made and the facilitation through this project to connect with fellow female Space4Women mentors. So they share their journeys for an hour. It goes also to talk about health issues. It talks about professionalism, and you see as our latest mentor and speaker who came in was Pascal Ehrenfreud. So what does it feel to lead a whole space agency was quite interesting for the mentees to hear about. You have younger speakers who came in, like Stephanie Wan, who was one of the co-chairman of SGAC, and who is, I think, in her early 30s. And so you do have this kind of groups. You see Romana Koffler on the bottom left, who is UNOOSA employee and secretariat and lead of SEMPAGE and IWAN, the groups on planetary defense that I work with. So a lot of different portrait backgrounds. Julie Giroux, working at SpaceX, the blonde woman, third one at top of the screen, and who's a space lawyer for SpaceX. So all those backgrounds to share the different careers and lives that you can have as a woman in the space sector. The objectives of this was to create a safe space to share personal portraits. And so they had an hour to present their portraits free. I did not give them any obligation except from being honest and try to be as vulnerable as possible, because that helps the mentees. I banished the slides on this is what my company does and please buy my stuff, because I think we have enough of that when we go to the space sector in different conferences. Bring people from all disciplines, ages, and backgrounds. And then those webinars are an hour and a half. So 1 hour for them to present, 30 minutes for the mentees to ask their questions directly to the mentors. They mic themselves, put on their cameras, and have those one-on-one meetings. Create a sense of community among the mentees, and it's important for you. That's a mix of things that you need to take into consideration when you join this this group, is that you will create this sense of community, and you will also discuss expectations, goals, objectives, and set a calendars with your mentees. You really need to come in with objectives for you to work well with your mentees. I always advise people to do their homework on the Space4Women network and to reach out to Marcus, but I will talk about this just in the next slide. So our next UNOOSA Space4Women monthly webinar, this is the title is way too long, but our next monthly webinar is this Saturday. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because, one, we have a wonderful speaker, So-Yun Yi. If you've never crossed paths with her, she is an astronaut. She is the funniest human you'll ever meet. She's extremely honest about her journey in space, and I can't do it right now because I'm sharing my screen, but at the second I'm done sharing it, I will share in the joint chat the link to register to this. Because this month, this is combined with the Space Consortium at Harvard and MIT Space Week, which I also organize, which enables me to do whatever I want. And so for that purpose, and because it falls on the same week, the monthly webinars are usually the last Saturday of every month. And this month it worked pretty well. So we decided to make this monthly webinar open to the public as a webinar. So the mentees will be in the room. They will ask the questions to So-Yun and we will have her portrait. But if you are interested in knowing what's going on in those webinars, then you can connect and see for yourself this Saturday. So tips and lessons learned. Ask your prospective mentees to do their homework. And that's something that was quite important because some people just reach out to you and say, do you want to be my mentor? And you do not realize that they have not Googled you, that they have no idea what you do, and you don't even know how you're going to be able to help them. So ask them to go through the Space4Women program, to look at the portraits, and for them to have real reasons to reach out to you. Take the time to, and that connects to the slides because it's the same advice when you do the webinar than when you do this whole program in general. Take the time to meet with your prospective mentees to make sure it is a good match. And that is something that I had not taken into consideration right away. I was sent some mentees my way and I didn't really think about selecting after that. But from the very beginning, put those discussions on the table, discuss expectations, goals, objectives, set a calendar, not only for the webinar, set a calendar for your mentees, and make sure that you have goals and objectives that you're going to fulfill. And that is something that has been adapted for this year. Marcus, through the new rules of the Space4Women mentorship program, you do have to set those calendars and those objectives, and you can mentor for 3 months or 6 months or a year. The timeline depends on you. Do your homework on the Space4Women network itself. Research the mentor, research the resources, reach out to people like me, your fellow mentors, Marcus. There's plenty to do. And also just, you can get involved quite easily via the monthly calls, the collaboration among mentors. For example, through this, I joined the Brooke Owens Fellowship to help select people for this scholarship for students. We are doing an event on Valentina Day in June. There is the Women Space Week, the World Space Week, which theme is Space4Women this year. So through this network, you just find opportunities to get involved, connect with your fellow colleagues, and do the work. And finally, this is important, do not do it for the name recognition. UNOOSA is really clear on the fact that the point is not to call ourselves ambassadors, that we do not put on our LinkedIn that we work for UNOOSA. We are here to help, and that's what we do. And we're not doing this because we say at some point in our volunteer activities that we are UNOOSA Space4Women mentors. So if the goal, and that happens, to want to have some sort of glam, to have some titles, this is not the right place to do that, because it's a lot of work and no recognition, because that's not the point of it. So that's, I think, is my last slides. The pros and cons, kind of a summary. If you become a Space4Women mentor or mentee, you will connect with a fantastic network of fellow colleagues, not only through the UNOOSA Space4Women group, but the unofficial original Space4Women group, women who are also involved in Women in Aerospace, Women in Space, Women in Copernicus. I think when you start really getting involved with organizations that focus on helping minorities and promoting women in STEM and all other field of space research disciplines. Then you connect with people who are like-minded and who are open to collaborations. You will get wonderful mentees. I never thought I would get mentees so intelligent, funny, and who make me reflect a lot about my own work. And that brings me to my third point: the boundary work. You will do that's from my field of study, science and technology studies. We talk a lot about boundary work. So who you are, where are your boundaries, what do you teach, what do you not teach? That's, I think it taught me a lot about myself. UNOOSA does a pre-selection of your mentees, so you end up with mentees of high quality. You have a lot of freedom, and that I think is reflective of in this presentation. I created monthly webinars. I got in touch with Space Cafe, as I'm sure you know, that's a series of webinars, and we're gonna make those monthly webinars available through the Space Cafe platform. I started doing speaking engagements in school and always adding in my slides some points on Space4Women and the importance of women in STEM and all space-related fields, and created local activities like within my space consortium, the essence of Space4Women lunches to connect my female colleagues with myself and others in the area. And finally, the support that you get from Marcus and the UNOOSA team is wonderful. When you know that they have a portfolio of a lot of different activities, that they're not full-time on this and their team is relatively small, the amount of time you send them questions and they give you fantastic feedback, they are here to listen to you and to collaborate is really remarkable. And I will say the cons are that this year was a little bit difficult in terms of there were some hiccups, there were some miscommunication among the mentors with the mentees because it was the first year, but I do not expect that this will continue this year. At least for the past few months, it hasn't. And the boundary work, when you work on yourself, is always a challenge. So I put it in the cons, even though it's also in the pros. So that's it for me. I will just let you to ponder, if you want to become a mentee or a mentor, what are your own objectives as a mentor or a potential mentee? And what would you like to bring to the mentees if you become a mentor? And that's it. I'll be happy to answer any question that you may have. And now that I stop sharing my screen, I will be able to put in the chat all the links that I was telling you about. So you have the link to register for the Space4Women monthly webinar with Soyeon Yi, the link to register for all Space Week events, and the Space4Women Facebook page if you want to get involved with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, both of you, Marcus, for the overall presentation and the timeline, and Alisa for your very enthusiastic and motivating talk. I think I personally think it's a really, really great initiative, a great idea behind it, and as far as I could judge right now, also a very, very good implementation. And actually, I think I'm quite sure that some of our participants do have some questions. So please, if you have any questions to Marcus, maybe about the general outline, and especially to Alicia about the mentor program, please raise them now. As the audience is obviously still thinking, just one personal immediate question that came into my mind, not only now, but Elisa, you said this boundary work. So maybe from your point of view, what did you learn from being a mentor? What was the main thing you learned? Because I think that's really interesting.
Well, I'll say that you learn about human nature, because out of all the mentors that I had, they all had different personalities. They all came from different disciplines, and that I was ready for. I knew that I could talk with a space scientist and a space lawyer, but I wasn't expecting maybe some who I needed to reach out to, because otherwise they would not reach out to me, and others who would, connect with me twice a week. And so finding this balance and being able to establish your own guidelines so that, all can benefit from the program equally, answer their questions. And the request varied a bunch. You had people who pretty much asked you, how can I build my career in space, which is a pretty big task, and others who were very specific, and this is the chapter of my thesis and I'm asking this space law question, what do you think? So I would say that there was some boundary work, and just also the amount of work that came my way. I usually jump in and do not really think fully of the consequences in terms of amount of hours, but it was very fulfilling because you end up creating wonderful bonds with people that you have never known, and at the end of the day, I share advice and I try to help them, but I do not see them as inferiors or younger. It doesn't feel this way. It's kind of when you teach, I'm sure for people have teachers have a stature of, oh, I'm your teacher, I'm your mentor, but really they are colleagues. They are either current colleagues or future colleagues, and this is the way they need to be treated. They don't need to be treated as people that you ponder advice on and that's something that is also very important. Do not give them advice saying this is what's going to work for you. You say, this worked for me, these things did not work for me but might work for you. Just do your shopping and see what works, and I'll be there to support you throughout your journey. But and every single history is different, and you should not project your own life on your mentees. So I'll say that it forced me in some ways to look at myself and where I found myself in my own career, but also it enabled me to very sincerely connect with wonderful future colleagues.
Thanks a lot. So are there any questions from the audience?
Maybe you can explain a little bit the process to become a mentor, and if it's always open, or is there also deadlines?
Yes, thanks a lot. It's always tricky, obviously, to speak about something when we just closed the application. Yes, we have in the first year we had a very strict deadline, so we closed it to be able to announce it for the first time on the 11th of February 2020. We have closed it now for the time being as well, just because we need to get a bit of a rhythm in the entire process. We will now open it for the application for the mentees. We will start matching the mentees with the mentors. So that's the next steps. But as soon as we get rolling the entire network, we will be starting to collect and allow applications throughout the year. Since we had the first year very strict 1 year policy that we have to match the mentors and the mentees for 1 year, and we figured out that was one of the results of the lessons learned is that some of the mentees, as Alyssa pointed out, they don't know what they want and they don't know what to achieve. And if it's just about, hey, can you help me with a reference letter for this internship, it might just be a mentoring job for a few hours, which is still very, very good, but it might not be lasting for a year. What we are trying to institutionalize is a bit of a rolling basis to tell us, so that the mentors tell us, okay, I am free again, you can open up my profile in the coming months, so I accept new mentees. And with this process, we can then also start accepting new mentors. I think that's something which we need to institutionalize. We need to jump the first hurdle, now running, and then you can expect it open up very soon again. The application itself is very straightforward. It is to fill out an online Microsoft Forms online, submitting also SCV. Obviously, we are selecting obviously with backgrounds from the space sector. We have our lessons learned from that, from the application process as well. What we are really changed a bit is that we, as Alyssa said, we are asking for concrete deliverables. So we're asking the mentees on the one hand side to tell us what they want to achieve. I think that's one of the lessons learned Alyssa pointed out, is she doesn't know what some of the mentees want to achieve. And we ask them to think about, to do this process internally. They are taking the time of well-respected experts from the field, right? So there has to be a thought process on the mentee side first and foremost. But we're also asking from the mentors to put in a few hours of voluntary work. And while we respect and we really are grateful for their voluntary work, we also kindly ask them to dedicate this time and amount of time to be able to be referenced on the UNOOSA website. There have been a few just a few occasions that there was a bit of mismatch between those who wanted to join the network and the outcomes. So, and that's something which we need to be a bit more straightforward in the beginning. Also from our side, a bit more on the communication side. But in terms of the application process, it's very straightforward, and it's no selection on the basis of whether you're a STEM field representative or if you're a legal expert or if you're a policy expert or communication.
Thank you very much. Rufai, you raised your hand.
Yes, please. I really wasn't sure if this will fit, but I mean, I think Marcus raised the point about bringing men on board, the gender equality campaign, and I was kind of pondering on it a little that will it fit into this role modeling thing we've been discussing for women, like not having limited role models, and if we bring more men on board to mentor, will it fit? Of course, pushing the awareness, the campaign, but also serving as mentors. I'm just having that kind of conflict in my mind, and maybe you can provide some perspective.
My personal opinion is that we need more men also to be on the mentoring side. I think that goes without saying. We saw in the picture from Alyssa that she took on a few male mentees, which is great. I think she has some in her own selection process. She decided on a bit of a percentage, how many men and women. I think that's really important. The focus is on getting more women in the space sector. But I think, to be very honest, I think we need men also mentoring, and also men mentoring young women, because that will be starting, and that's what Alyssa said, very straightforward. That will give the entire space sector the understanding of the issues, of the concerns, of the constraints, everything which is there, which we can also only address together. And I think if you're considering for the next opening, Rufai, to apply to become a mentor, please do so. We would be happy to welcome more men. And when I say more, we would be happy to welcome the first man to mentor in the Space4Women mentoring program.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'll come in as a mentee.
So yeah, we had this discussion point also already in our last two webinars, and I think it's not only because of Rufa, because you always mentioned that, but I think I completely agree that this is one of the main issues to really working together. And I really hope that also you will receive applications for more male mentors as well. Are there any other questions from the audience?
Okay, maybe I could ask this. I don't
Sure.
know if you have access to statistics of participation of women in STEM industries, maybe across the globe, or yeah, like I'm really interested in exploring these areas a little bit more.
Let me first, maybe Alyssa has some more news about that or information about that. What you could do is you could go to the UNOOSA YouTube channel. We had exactly on the 10th of February, so the day before the International Day of Women and Girls in Science, we had a webinar, or we had an event around that. And we from UNOOSA, we don't collect any statistics around that. That would be more going into UNESCO's field. So colleagues from UNESCO doing great work on that. We are using existing statistics, but I agree that's something, if you would be advancing or if you're interested in this area, I think that's something which is really important, because I stressed it, I underlined it, evidence-based awareness raising is really important. What is the starting point? Why do we do what we're doing? What has been changed since we're doing it? So just to answer your question very short, we don't collect any statistics yet, but it would be something which we would be interested in the future. We had at the webinar which I mentioned, we had an expert from UNESCO there. We touched exactly on that topic, that we need to improve that work in the future.
Yes, I'll add that we got a few numbers throughout, those meetings. The one that comes up often is 17 to 20%. There's 17 to 20% of women in the space industry, but that depends on your country. That depends also on your discipline. In the social sciences and humanities of space, like the field I'm in, talking about law and policy, usually you do have more women. You would get maybe 40%. It can go up to 40% in certain sectors. When you look at STEM fields, then it goes down, and for certain in certain countries, number of women who code or women in math, it can be 5 to 9%, and that's a real challenge, which is why most of the mentors through the Space4Women program, it's really about helping women join STEM fields. And I'm very honored to be one of those few social scientists in the group, because I want to help women who join STEM fields to have the legal and policy tools that they need to be able to go up in their field. So I would say that if you are interested in those, you do have, through the mentors, some women who have done those kind of studies. I can't remember her name, but there is one of the mentors who is from Central America, who showed us a program that was, I think, connected to Women Who Code, and who brought up the number in her country of women involved in coding from the 20% to 35 to 40, and those kind of models can then be applied in different countries, and it's really, really inspiring. So you'll be able to find some data there. And to connect to your previous question about the involvement of men in the program, for now, because I could not find portraits, 1 hour and a half portraits of women in the space industry. I wanted to focus on my female colleagues to showcase them a little bit. But talking with also the Space Cafe platform and the places where those videos will be made available next year, I do want to also showcase male mentors who my main mentor in my life was with male, and those male mentors who are fantastic advocate for women, who are not only people who are going to open doors, but who have worked in the field. You have researchers at Harvard, you have researchers in other universities who work in science education and who work in women in science and who are male, and those have fantastic statistics and data and can help. And you have people in high industries, high organizations, people like Marcus, who are opening the door and who are in many ways expert in the field, more than some women are, to talk about these topics. So we do not want to discriminate on the opposite side, obviously. And as Marcus said, I make a point to always have male mentees in my groups, because my ratios are changing. I went from 10 mentees with 3 being male to now I'm going to have 1 to 3 mentees, and out of those 3, 1 will be male. So I try to keep a 1/3 ratio, to always leave this space for women to and to support them. But my male mentees were the one reaching out to me saying, I saw the program, I read the website, I want to get involved, I want to know how to help and how to be a better researcher and a better space sector member, and by knowing these things. So I welcome you, and I hope you will become a mentee, a mentor, whatever you want in this program.
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much for your answers. Thank you, Marcus, also. That was really directional.
Thank you very, very much. So I know that Marcus and Alicia are very busy people as well, and I know that Marcus has to leave now. So I again would like to really, really thank you very much for your contribution, for your time, for the possibilities you showed to our participants. And coming back to the invitation from Marcus, I really, really hope that we can also cooperate in future more closely, also within the setting of our 2 organizations. Thank you very much for having you here. And I wish you all the best and hope to see you soon at one or the other, maybe also gender-related event. Maybe next time on Saturday.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It was a real pleasure to present. Thanks, Alyssa, for joining. Yeah, if you have any questions, reach out. Feel free to reach out to us. I have posted the link to the Space4Women website in the chat. And yeah, if there's any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for the invitation, Marcus and Barbara. It was a pleasure. Rufa, I hope to stay in touch, all of you. If you want to join us on Saturday, I'd be very, very happy to see you there. And I will put, before I could disconnect, my email in the chat if you want to reach out to me with any further questions about law and policy or just Space4Women in general. So thank you so much for having me.